Okay, before we start anything, today is International and National Pets Day. So congratulations for all of you to be a pet parent on like and uh, try to learn something for your pets on this day. And also to mention that Dev is a trainer who also does protection sports. So they teach dogs how to be how to. Okay, Dev, I think you should. It's better that you explain rather than me saying something and goofing it up.
Okay. Okay. So, like most trainers, I got into like training from I started with training pet dogs. Uh, Eventually around 2012, 13, somewhere around that, I got into training working dogs. I compete in a working dog sport called PSA, which is basically like higher level obedience and protection training. Um, and right now I'm a consultant for one of our special forces, one of the Indian special forces. Um, so I do a lot of stuff like that in relation to, like, when you say working dogs, it's like actual service animals, which is basically, it might be, your military working dogs or your police dogs or, stuff like that. And, certain things that you can do as civilians as well, which might include something like search and rescue, or, stuff like that. I still train pet dogs, obviously, maybe not as much as I used to because I don't find time. I travel a lot to teach people, to do, to help people work their dogs and, stuff like that, both nationally and internationally. So I don't get to train as many pet dogs as I once used to, but I do enjoy training them whenever I get the chance. And I like interacting with pet parents, and, like, a lot of pet dog training, I feel like should happen at home in terms of, like, the pet parents should be involved in the training. So whenever I get a chance, I like to interact with pet parents and help them out in whatever way I can.
Okay. And what stage do you usually start training dogs? Like, when I'm asking this is I'm not asking in general. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm asking when do pet parents come to you for training? Like, do they come to you when they have puppies, or do they come to you with certain behavioral problems?
So, I mean, there's a variety of this, to be very honest. Like, there are some who come to me even before getting a dog into, like, to um, sort of get help in terms of what dog should they get, depending on the lifestyle that they have,
Right.
the experience that they have, and so on, and how should they get ready for something like this, all those things, right? Like, some people do that. And I mean, to be fair, that's ideal, but not a lot of, well, not enough people do that, and that's not necessarily, to go to a trainer and do like a consultation and stuff like that, even though that is available. But that's not what I'm necessarily always talking about. Sometimes it might be something as simple as, like, I've done a few podcasts in which, I talk about what can help people select the breed that they want, or the, like, but depending on their experience, depending on their lifestyle, all those things, right? So something like doing all that research, right? But yeah, sometimes people come to me even at that stage. Sometimes people come to me once they get the puppy home. That is the most common, usually, when they get the puppy home, right? That's usually for like obedience training and, uh, that kind of things. uh, Now, when does the training start? Technically, training starts the day, honestly, training starts even before the puppy comes home. Like, a good breeder, for example, should start doing things with the puppies that will help pet parents in the future, right? But if not that, at least the day the puppy comes home, training starts. Now, when I say training, I don't mean teaching the puppy to sit down, all those things.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, like, something as simple as getting the puppy used to its crate, getting a puppy used to its bed. Toilet training starts from, I mean, it should at least start from the day, that the puppy comes home. if not, the breeder should also have you ideally started, training them and getting them accustomed to certain surfaces and, those kind of things. But yeah, so training starts from the day the puppy comes home. Socialization is also sort of, if you look at it, it's training, right? So a lot of that. Now, to me, like me being involved in the puppy's training, because right now I'm not really in a position to like basically go to the pet parents' home. Most times I'm not. A lot of times people bring their pets to me, right? Uh, so basically what happens here is that mm, like I'm not very comfortable, to be very honest, to be involved before all the vaccinations are done, stuff like that. And I'll tell you the reason behind it. Majority of the times, um, people get advice from veterinarians that let's not sort of like don't take your dog out or stuff like that before the vaccinations are done. Now, the thing is, from a veterinarian's perspective, which is maybe their job is to take care of the physical health of the puppy, maybe that's right from a veterinarian's perspective. Now, from my perspective, my job is also to take care of the psychological well-being of the puppy, right? Now, the problem is most times the window for early socialization, what we call like impact period, for example, gets done by 16 weeks or so. So now when it gets done by 16 weeks, and most of the time your vaccinations are going to be done around the same time or later, but not earlier than that. So which means if your dog's going to be confined to the house sort of, by the time, till like 16 weeks, not the best idea, to be very honest, right? Now, I try and sort of give them like a mid ground where, yeah, yes, like be careful, like don't take your dogs to something like, for example, a dog park where that there's going to be so many different dogs, some of them vaccinated, some of them unvaccinated. We don't really know. They're going to poop and pee and stuff like that. So don't take them to places like that, but do take them out, do expose them to the world carefully, where they're not like exposed to like a ton of pathogen right away without being vaccinated. So yeah, do it carefully, but I do want them to do that. But that being said, because I'm giving sort of an advice that I have to, because I see too many pups that weren't socialized well, and now and this is an imprinting period. What you could have done then cannot be done later on, right? We'll talk more about this, as we move on, but. Because of that, I myself am not very comfortable, because I don't want it to seem like, I was in a rush to start training and take your money or something like that. And that's why I advised against the vet's advice, right? I don't want it to be like that. So that's why I'm not comfortable starting the training till then. But I still advise that you start things, right? And I can give advice on the phone or whatever. I don't charge people for that or anything, but I want dogs to have a good life, right? So that's essential for dogs. Right? So
yeah, I think, Dev, that is something that most of the professionals have in common, right? I think most of us want dogs to do well. Regardless of how it affects our business, I think in most cases business comes secondary. The first thing is that the more dogs do well, um it will help build a better industry, so as to say.
Absolutely. So like, let me give a little bit of a background on myself, right? Like, so I'm a civil engineer and an MBA by education. I worked in the construction industry for a few years, right? I let go of a much more lucrative business than dog training to do this, because I felt like at some point, that this was what I was meant to do. This is where I was meant to be, right? Uh, so, if it was about the money, I would not be doing this. Quite simply, because even by ripping people off, there's no way I'm going to earn the same amount of money I was earning before. So, if it was about the money, and I'm sure it's the same for so many of us, right? Like, so many of us have come to this, like typically this generation at least, because as we were growing up, we couldn't tell our parents that we want to be dog trainers or nutritionists, or
Yes.
maybe what was sort of okay was being a veterinarian, right? But anything other than that was sort of not okay. So most of us have education in, I mean, primary education in something else, and then we moved on to getting into this, and really stuck by, and that's why we are here. So that aspect of trying to make money is a whole different. We wouldn't be here if that was the case.
But you have found your way to the top of the of the training circle, I would say. And okay, let's see. We are at 7 o'clock. We've got quite a few people. Should we get started on the topic at hand?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Before we get started, everyone, please mute yourselves and close your uh, cameras. We will go through what Dev has to tell us, and once he's done, then we'll do a small question and answer session at the end. Okay. Yes. Okay, Dev. What are we discussing today? How do we, I think you just touched on it a little bit, saying that people get in touch with you asking what breeds to take according to their lifestyle and so on and
Mhm.
so on. And yes, that is the ideal situation. But tell us more about it. Like how do people select a breed, or what do people look at before they get something?
Okay. So now, uh, what I'm going to speak about this primarily is my personal experience of being a trainer and being involved with, X amount of people for the last decade or so, right? With, people that get in touch with me in regards to their problems, or maybe not even problems, but they might be proactive about it, whatever, right? Now, this is just my experience. Now, I'm sure that different things also happen, but this is what I've seen most of the times end up happening, right? So now, uh, one thing that I feel like is, I don't know, and I don't know where it's come from, okay, but it's a very, it's very widely sort of accepted, and not just in the pet parent community, but I guess in a lot in the training community as well, maybe. Uh, and I sort of like to, and some of the things you will notice that I will differ from your average trainer, and I will differ from that because I got exposed to certain other kinds of training communities beyond what you typically find here, and I see how they do things, and I saw the efficiency in that, right? Okay, but let me come back to what are we talking about exactly? How do you, like, what is going to be a dog of choice, for example? Okay, uh, there I feel like, by and large, again, not everyone, but by and large, there is a big misconception as to how we should be selecting a dog for ourselves. Okay, like when we bring a dog into our home and into our lives, what should be the criteria for what kind of a dog to get? Okay, now, what I've heard the most is, what is your living situation like? Okay, like, do you have a bungalow? Are you living in an apartment? How small or big is your apartment? uh, like, it's a lot of that, right? uh, I've heard things like dogs need a lot of space to run around. Okay, uh, stuff like that. Why would you confine an animal like that to an apartment? These things, right? And this is basically the information that sort of goes into selecting the dog of choice. Okay, and to me, that's not necessarily the best criteria. Now, I'm not saying that this, a little bit of this may not go into, that the other information that is going into, helping you select a dog, but uh, this is not as important as people make it out to be, and this is primarily what people think about, I guess, right? what is more important to me is your lifestyle. That is number one. Okay. Like I ask people, okay, so let's say you work Monday to Friday, right? So when you come home from Friday, and what are you thinking about? Okay, it's now tomorrow's weekend starting. I'm going trekking, or I can't wait to get up on Saturday mornings and go play cricket with my friends. Or like is that you? Like, are you that kind of a person? Or oh man, the weekend's here. I'm not going to get out of bed till 12. Is Are you that kind of a person? Okay. Now, simplest thing here is, let's say if you are the kind of person that's going to be like, okay, so Friday's here, I'm going to party till 2 and then not get out of bed till 12. And there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, do you? But if you're that kind of a person, the possibility is you're not made for a Belgian Malinois. Okay. Possibility is you're not made for a border collie. Okay. The possibility is you're not made for a JRT. Okay. Get yourself a dog that likes to do what you like to do. Okay. You do much better with a dog that's like, oh man, like if you are in bed till 12, that dog would be like, I'll cuddle with you till 12. Okay. Get yourself a dog like that. Okay. Now, let's say now the other side of this is, oh, you live in an apartment. Why would you get yourself a German Shepherd? Why would you get yourself like a really energetic Labrador or something like that? Now, when I say Labrador, Divya's here. The kind of Labrador she has, I know like there's too much bad breeding happening in Labradors, right? So people now think Labrador is like an easygoing dog. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Ideally, it shouldn't be. Divya's Labrador will give Border Collie a run for its money. Yeah, like it's amazing. Like it's an amazing. Like Kenzie is super, right? Anyway, so coming back to so people are like, you have an apartment. Why would you have a dog like that? But I'll tell you why I would have a dog like that. I would have a dog like that because I'm the kind of person that on a Saturday morning or even before I go to work, okay, I wake up at 6 o'clock, I put my dogs in the car and I go to the field nearby and I train with them. I do things with them. If I don't know how to train, if nothing else, I play fetch with them. I do a lot of things that, satisfy their urge. I like to do things to learn about, okay, how to teach them certain things. I like to learn about how to challenge them, right? If I can do all of that, and if I am the kind of person that has fun in doing all of that, then whether they live in an apartment or whether they live, in a bungalow, whatever, like, see, the thing is, you might live in a palace, okay? You still sleep in one room. It's not like you change rooms every hour at night, right? Still sleep in one room. Okay. You still go to work. Okay. You still, when the day is upon you, you still go out of the palace and, you head to wherever you need to head to for work or whatever. And then you come back in the evening, right? When you talk about, okay, I have a bungalow and I have a backyard, I see the intention to confine that dog to the backyard. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is not a great idea to begin with. I mean, yeah, okay, you might have a little bit more convenience in your life without putting in the work. But I mean, honestly, you're making that dog's life miserable, right? Imagine you living in a palace and then being like, yes, because you live in a palace, you don't need to go out. Why would you go out? You live in a palace, right? So that's just, to me, that's rubbish, right? You have a dog, and to expect that sort of, like the dog might want, the dog might have to run around. Like, okay, you take the dog to the field and you do things with the dog, and then you come back and then you go to work. And then the dog is basically not doing much all day because maybe it lives in an apartment, right? But that's like, don't you imagine, like that's like imagining, thinking that Roger Federer is also in bed waving around his racket all night.
That's not how things work. He goes and plays tennis for X amount of time. He comes back, he rests. He has, everything else that everyone else has. So thinking that dogs need to run around 24 hours
Yeah.
is wrong. Now,
Correct.
most times what people have is dogs that are choosing themselves when to play or when to, have like high energy outbursts or whatever, and when to rest, right? People don't have a system in which they can explain to dogs that this is a context where you get to play, you get to have fun, you whatever, right? Like you learn new things, you basically exercise your brain and your body, okay? And this is a context where you come back and you rest and recover from all of that, okay? So that's how dogs are. But you need to make them understand that, okay, we do this from 6 to 7. We don't do this from 9 to 10 when I'm at work. Okay,
Correct.
most people have problems because they have not arrived at a system where they can explain to the dog what is the context of doing high energy things and what is the context of doing, like, just resting things, right? They're not able to explain. And I say context because I don't want it to be time. Okay, I don't necessarily want it to be place, although yes, it can be time, it can be place, but even for more convenience it can just be context, meaning my dog. Okay, so like, people that don't know, I have one Belgian Malinois and a Dutch Shepherd right now. I had two Belgian Malinois before that live with me uh, inside the house as pet dogs, and they do like police work kind of work. Like they are trained to bite people and take people down, stuff like that. And they are okay with my 2-year-old son. Absolutely no problem. They live in the house like pet dogs, and they're sleeping most of the times when they're home, or they just like get up and go to a different place and sleep there or whatever. Okay, and I take them out to work with, and we don't do a lot of it. Like people might think that, oh, but they might have like 4 hours of work. That's why you're saying this. No, they have like maybe like 20-25 minutes of work each. The work is very challenging to the brain, not physically. Okay. Like once they figure out, okay, how to do this, I teach them something new. Once they figure out how to do that, I teach them something new. So their brain is constantly being challenged, right? I don't have to do it at one specific time. Sometimes I might do it in the evening instead of in the morning, and they're okay with it because they understand the context, not necessarily the time, right? So this is basically what I want to talk about today, taking into consideration a lot of different things before coming to the conclusion of what is the right dog for you, uh, but not just the typical considerations that are right now going into things, right?
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. So let's say on an average, how long should you be walking the dog and how long does the dog usually rest? Because I see a lot of pet parents get very uncomfortable when the dog is resting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like people get in touch with me saying that, oh, I see my dog sleeping for like 10, 15 hours in a day. And uh, I think being in this field, we know that 10, 15 hours in a day is normal. And
It's good if your dog's sleeping
yeah,
15 hours a day. It's
exactly.
a nice thing.
Yeah. How do you say should an ideal day for a dog be like? Like, uh, when you say work, what kind of work, how intense that work is? Are walks included in the working or are walks separate? When I say walks, it is the
I
toilet
know.
breaks. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now, okay, nice point here, really. Let me first come to the sleep thing, right? Okay. So the thing is, most times, even with, and you know this, even with nutrition, people sort of like people dogs, not the same thing, right? We are not the same animal. We are not close to being the same animal. Our systems don't work the same way, right? Similarly, like even with in relation to sleep, we are sound sleepers and we sleep less hours and then we go to work longer. Okay. Dogs don't work like that. If you see, most dogs are not sound sleepers, right? Like if you see your dog, whenever your dog's sleeping at home, they sleep in one corner, they get up, they walk to another corner. So there are questions coming in between.
Yeah, we'll get to them. We'll get to them.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Yeah. So you will see sometimes like at home, right? Like your dog will sleep in one corner. After a while, the dog will sort of get up, go and walk to another corner and sleep there. Then after a while, get up on the couch and sleep there. I'm not right now getting into what your dog's allowed or not allowed to do, right? Like there are some households where couch is not allowed, whatever. That's a different story. But I'm saying that you will see dogs not sleeping soundly as much as humans do, but they sleep longer. Okay, like that's how their sleep and their recovery periods and everything. That's how it's designed for them. So it's completely normal for your dog to basically sleep like 15, even 16 hours a day. Okay, it's completely normal. Now that sort of brings us to this sort of place where, but you go to work and your dog, you're not home from, let's say, 9 to 5, whatever, right? And I'm like, yes, but if I was, my dog would still be sleeping. So like he probably doesn't even know. I mean, he knows I'm around, but I mean, he doesn't really care that I'm around because he's still sleeping even on days that I am home. So that's something that people need to understand. Now, this is like separation anxiety, all those problems. That's a different story. But I'm saying, like, for normal, like, without those problems and stuff like that, the dog's anyway going to sleep throughout the day. And like, again, it's going to be like, people are going to be like, okay, but how do you know, like, throughout the day? Because throughout the night also the dog's sleeping and all that. The thing is, you can control that. There are ways, and I'll explain to you, as we move on, that, there are ways that you can set this up where, your dog is like, okay, I'm around this time, I'm going to have sort of like, being exercised or whatever, all those things. And then around this time, I'm going to be sleepy, right? So there are ways for you to set this up. Okay. Now there's that. The other thing is, for how long should a dog work, or like how long should a dog be exercised or whatever, right? I don't really look at it like that. I don't agree to a tired dog is a happy dog. Okay. Actually, when you're tired, what does your body secrete? Cortisol. Okay. Cortisol is stress. Cortisol is responsible for aggression. Now, I'm not saying your dog gets tired and becomes aggressive, but it's the same hormone that basically is responsible for aggression. Okay. So a tired dog is not necessarily a happy dog. Yes, there might be so many times when he's also tired and happy, but that's not a direct correlation. Okay, that's not like, okay, I'll just make my dog run 10 kilometers and my dog is happy. That's not
basically
logical.
he's not happy because he's tired.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like there might be other things that are also tiring, but that
Correct.
are also causing happiness. Right.
Correct.
So there are all these things. Now, the other thing that people end up doing is, by trying to tire dogs out, build on endurance. Okay. A lot of times, like for 4 days, your dog might be like, okay, fine, I'm coming home and I'm going to sleep. And on the 5th day, you see quite not so much. And on the 6th day, it's even lesser, right? So you keep building endurance, and then you're like, oh my God, this is not working for whatever reason, right? So there's that. Now, you think about when you say energy, right? Like, what is energy really? Energy, like I keep telling this to people, energy is, and I'm assuming a lot of nutritionists here, right? So
No, not
energy,
really.
not really. Okay,
No.
cool. But
All pet parents.
Okay. So energy basically is ATP molecules in the muscle, right? In the mitochondria. Okay. So if you look at a dog's muscle fiber and you test it against a human muscle fiber, the amount of mitochondria in a dog's muscle fiber are a lot more. Okay. The using up of ATP molecules is an exothermic reaction. I don't want to be too complex here because it's pet parents, right? But what I mean to say is, when I say it's an exothermic reaction, it creates heat. So a dog heats up, and a dog doesn't sweat like us, because only sweat through paws and through its tongue. So it doesn't have a good cooling mechanism. So it gives you a very false feeling of, basically the dog heats up and the dog wants to cool down. So it gives you a false feeling of the dog being tired. The reality is the dog's just heated up a bit, and the dog cools down again, and then the dog's like, let's go again, right? And then that's usually when pet parents will call me up and they're like, he won't shut up, like, there's no way to tire him out, and stuff like that. So, but there is a way to tire him out. You tire out the brain. Okay, we have to understand whatever we do know about how we co-evolved as two species, right? Like humans, brain, dog, physicality, right? And I see more often today where we want to defeat dogs in their physicality, whereas our strong suit is the brain. Yeah. Okay, so don't target their physicality, target their brain. Okay, like for example, if you have an over energetic or hyperactive beagle, for example, okay, teach it to track. Okay, it tracks a few hundred meters, let's say 200 meters or something like that, and that dog will be done for a while. Okay, it will not look like a very physical activity, because the dog's very slowly just putting his nose on the ground and following a track. But trust me, that dog, because the concentration that the brain requires to be able to do that is crazy. And then once your dog can do that, and the dog's like really good at it, and the dog's brain is like, I can do this in my sleep, right? Then you can introduce, like, let's say, age the track. Meaning, what do I mean by that? Lay the track 15 minutes earlier, half an hour earlier. Okay. What you can do is now lay cross tracks, meaning have your friends walk through the track. Okay. How much time is this going to take you? 15 minutes max. Okay. But the dog will be done. Okay. Teach it to, okay. So let's say teach it, imprint it onto like a clove, for example. Okay. What do I mean by that? Teach your dog that wherever you find the smell of clove, or it can be anything. I'm just giving you the example of clove. It can be anything, but wherever you find this particular smell, you'll find your ball. Okay, or whatever it is that the dog likes. Right? Okay. Now, I'm sitting in this room. Now, I've hidden a small clove somewhere. Now, the dog has to find it and sort of sit there and whatever, right? Indicate on it or whatever. We can teach that separately. Okay? That dog, I'm telling you, maybe 3 or 4 repetitions of finding that clove, that dog's going to be done. Okay. So, and this is something you can very easily do. There are people who can help you with that. It's just something that's not prevalent. And what ends up happening is, in the process, you learn how to train your dog. Training is nothing but communication. Okay. Like, for example, I see pet parents be like, he doesn't listen to no, right? And I'm like, okay, how did you teach him no? And most pet parents are like, no. But I'm like, but he doesn't understand the word no. He doesn't, like, he wasn't born speaking English, or she wasn't born speaking English, right? So how, like, what have you done so that the dog understands the meaning of the word no, right? But this is something that you'll understand if you do things with your dog. You'll understand how dogs think. You'll understand that majority of the problem is because there is a pretty big gap of communication between pet parent and dogs, because pet parents don't typically know how dogs think, how dogs communicate, right? How dogs learn certain things, right? But if you start doing this, you'll start understanding how learning happens for them. And once you understand that communication gap will be bridged, and then from there on, everything else will be easier, right? Now coming to walks that you were talking about, right? What is, like, I have, again, slightly controversial opinion about walks. for one thing, toilet breaks are not walks. Toilet breaks are toilet breaks.
Agreed.
Like, right? So, but even walks, right? My dogs don't go for walks. I mean, they go for toilet breaks, but they don't go for walks, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong about walks. Like, I might go for a walk with my dog, but that's when, like, we feel like going for a walk, not as a,
As a
like, okay,
routine.
yeah, okay, so like, I have to take him 3 times, or I have to like, not like that, okay? Now, when I say this, a lot of people probably are going to be like, what are you talking about? Like, walks are so important. But hear me out, right? Like, what is a walk really? Have you seen, dogs out on the street that you might have in your lane or something like that? And you'll typically see them just laying around all day under a car, wherever they find shade or whatever, right? And during some time of the day or night, whatever, you'll typically see them, all of them sort of go around the territory, whatever the territory is, right? So typically, what is a walk supposed to be? Walk is supposed to be either to scavenge or just to find food or whatever, right? Like, you go around and see if you can find food. It's one. Two is to survey territory. What you're typically sort of going to do is, like, you're going to mark territory. You're going to see if any other dogs from other packs have been around, whatever. That's what street dogs typically do. So what is this essentially? This is work, isn't it? From the pack's point of view, it's work, right? Somewhere along the line, primarily humans domesticated dogs to work for them or work alongside them. Let's not even say work for them, because that's a little wrong, right? We domesticated them to work alongside us, okay? And in order for this symbiotic relationship to be successful, they wanted to have these dogs want to work. They were not forced to work. First of all, we have to understand that they want to work next to us. Somewhere along the line, okay, our equation started changing to a point where we were like, no. Your job is to sit on the couch all day. I will do the earning. I will do the working. You're not supposed to do anything because you're my dog. It's my job to take care of you. Somewhere along the line, that equation changed. And I don't think our dogs really understand it. They're not really, like, if you could tell them that this is our equation now, I don't think they're okay with it. All of them want to contribute. That's why you have your typical German Shepherd go bonkers when the bell rings, okay? Or your typical retriever wants to bring the ball back to you, right? Like, they still want to do what we created them for, right? And what we did was, because they still want to do, because walk is some sort of a simulation of work, you're like, okay, let's walk them 3 times a day, or let's walk them 5 times a day. And that's sort of what it became, right? Now, for me, my dogs actually go do something. Okay? And again, like, for my dogs, they're not actual service dogs. They're not actual police dogs. They don't actually go out and hunt criminals or anything like that, right? They do this because their genetics create in them the urge to do something like this. And because I understand it, I like to give them that outlet so that it doesn't, show up randomly at places where it's not supposed to. So that's all it is. But my point being that my dogs do what gives them the satisfaction of having a purpose in life. So I don't have to create like a cheap simulation of the same thing, right? Now I understand that it may not be possible for everyone. It may not, but that's precisely bringing back to my first point, that choose according to what the dog will like, right?
Or choose according to how your lifestyle is.
Yes. So, like, okay, so let me give you a simple example, right? Like, some of my closest friends. So I've played cricket growing up. I really, really enjoy cricket. Or I used to, at least, like, all throughout college, all throughout school, all of that, right? So a lot of my closest friends, okay, right now are ones that I played cricket with at some point in my life, right? Now, life happened to everyone. We don't get to play cricket, but those are the people that became friends to me, like the closest friends to me. Now I have dog friends, right? It might be people in the industry, it might be trainers, nutritionists, whatever, right? So many, whatever. But the point here is, usually, like, look at your friends, right? Like, everyone look at your closest friends. Typically, you have something that is extremely in common with your friend, and that is what brings you together.
Yeah.
Right? Now imagine if you have a friend that you have absolutely nothing in common with. Nothing. I mean, you don't even like the same things. Like, there is not even one subject or whatever that you have in common. Okay? What do you do when you spend time with each other? What do you talk about? Right? Now, this is exactly what happens when, like, you get a dog that doesn't like to do the things that you like to do. Okay? It's as simple as that. Okay? Like, if your dog gets to do the things that it likes to do because you like to do the same things, it'll absolutely be happy in a small apartment because it still gets to do what urges it has. Okay? I'll give you an example of, like, my own, right? I absolutely enjoy the things that, like, PSA, for example, or whatever it is that I do, the protection sports, let's say trailing down people, whatever, all these things. I absolutely enjoy this, right? This is what I like to do with my dogs. And so I have the kind of dogs that enjoy this. Okay? Like, for me, let's say if I get a scent hound, for example, if I get a sight hound, okay, like, I don't know, like a mudhol hound, or if I get a caravan hound, or if I get a saluki, all those, like, I hope everyone knows what sight hounds are, right? So if I get a sight hound, I mean, yes, it's a dog, so I'm going, like, because I love dogs, okay, but my relationship with that dog is going to be limited to, yes, it's a dog and I like dogs. Okay? Because I'm not extremely keen on doing what sight hounds are keen on doing. Okay? That's not fun to me.
Correct.
Right?
So
but what happens?
It's like you want to play cricket and your friends want to play football.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's even worse. I want to play cricket and my friends don't want to play. My friends are like, let's walk to the gate and come back home.
Yeah.
That's how things are now. So yeah. I mean, imagine that, right? So yeah, but that's sort of what is happening, right? But imagine, like, your relationship would be so much easier if both of you enjoyed the same thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
So that's sort of what I want to, and before we sort of go forward, I just want to explain that your dogs, they don't just come in different sizes, colors, fur types, coat types, whatever. They also come with different urges that they have genetically. Okay? That is why you have your terriers wanting to chase other animals. That is why you have your shepherds being territorial at home. That is why you have your retrievers be, typically, apart from the badly bred ones, be very loving and want to bring things back to you, and stuff like that. That is why you have certain problems that are much more common with Indies. Okay? It's because they don't come to you as a plain piece of paper that you can, as a trainer or as a pet parent, write on, and you write carefully and all the best things will happen. Sadly, I wish it was like that, but it's not. Okay? That paper that comes to you already has things written on it which is basically genetic material. Okay, so your dogs already are a certain way. So that needs to be thought about when you select, right? Like I always give this example. I went to someone to help them with their dog, and they had a husky. Okay, and there's this. He's an absolutely good boy. The only problem that we have is he pulls, and I'm like,
I wonder what
the
huskies were
husky,
doing before we brought
exactly,
them to India, right?
right? Like, what is a husky supposed to do? So, you know what I'm saying? Now, yes, there's going to be that odd pet parent who's going to get butt hurt by this, and they're going to say, like, we have a husky that doesn't pull. I mean, yes, but you were lucky. You won the lottery.
Yeah,
Okay. Like, not everyone's winning the lottery.
correct.
So, you know.
So let's take Husky's example, okay? Like what you said. How would training this particular husky who pulls, how
Mm-hmm.
can you train them to make sure that uh that we kind of bridge the gap between the pet parent and the dog?
Oh my God. Okay. So, there's going to be two answers here. One that is commercially viable and not going to hurt a lot of sentiments, and one that is the truth. Okay.
Let's
The
skip the first one.
Okay. The first one is going to be I'm going to try. And it will work to a certain extent. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, it's like, it's like, how do you say? Um, it's like teaching a cat to not paw at things. Okay. Um, if the dog has a genetic predisposition to do things, let me put it this way. When there is a fight between training and genetics, okay, training typically loses. Okay.
Okay.
And sadly, okay, there are certain things that we can do to put a lid on top of those genetics. Okay. Which we can do, which is management. The dog's not going to change. What you have to understand is the dog's not going to want to not pull. Okay. You see what I'm saying? But you can teach it to curb its urges largely. Okay. Once that particular stimulus is not there, meaning let's say like you'll see, you'll see things like, okay, when one family member walks the dog, it doesn't pull because it's learned that it cannot do this with this person. But when everyone else walks, then the dog goes back to its base behavior. This was because the base behavior typically is coming from a place of just like that urge is there. Okay. Now, yes, can we curb it? Can we put a lid on it? Yes. I am not entirely happy with the idea of complete suppression. Okay. Like there should be a time and place where the dog gets to do what the dog wants to do.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Something even as sort of, sinister to some people as biting humans. Okay. If that is too horrific for you, don't get a dog that was bred to bite humans. Simple as that.
Fair
okay.
Yeah.
If you want to get that kind of a dog, it doesn't mean that that dog should be, just walking around in society wanting to bite any person that it sees. But it should be ideally given an outlet to exercise these urges in a very safe, controlled setting. Okay. And when that happens, see, right now, this is very crude talk. Okay. There are a lot of technicalities in relation to this, but I'm not getting into that just yet. Right. But what I mean is that the best relationship is typically going to be when dogs get to do what their purpose in life was, what their genetic predisposition is pushing them to do.
And you enjoy that your dog gets to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So when you have that, like in one particular context, the dog gets to do it safely, in a very knowledgeable manner with people that can guide you who are experts in that, stuff like that. And then outside of it, the dog will be much more manageable, all that, because the dog's like, yes, but I get to do that, right? So, it's that kind of a thing, basically.
Okay. So Dev, let's look at some popular breeds and some of the traits that these breeds have, which people end up thinking that it's a behavioral problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's start with let's say Shih Tzus. So
Mm-hmm.
Shih Tzus uh, tend to be a little more guarding, a
Mm-hmm.
little more. I've even heard the word aggressive, and
Mm-hmm.
so how does this fit with that small toy breed?
What was their history? I'm not very familiar with Shih Tzu history because, um, very honestly, I didn't take much history in like toy breeds or like small breeds in the history of small breeds, but like a peek into like very essential people, a peek into the dog's history will tell you all you
Will tell
need
you.
to know about.
Yeah.
Will tell you all. So what was their history? I'm sure you know.
They were kept with kings to protect kings, although they were small
Companion
dogs.
dogs, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you have, yeah, it's basically like like kings will typically have like this kind of
And
um,
arrogance or
yeah, exactly, right? Like
yeah,
if they
that
were like if they were with kings and they were, I don't know, like going at servants and stuff like that all the time, and and they were allowed to do it, and it was seen as a the king's dog, and all of that. Um, that would probably explain a lot. Now, to be fair, what a lot of show breeding does to a lot of dogs, that also has to be taken into consideration. What a lot of show breeding does is, because in dog shows, uh, they need the dog to stand, and they need the dog to uh, be able to show its dentition to the judges, and the judges need to be able to handle, like maybe touch its foot, or be able to come close, or if not, at least maybe hold their lips up and check their dentition, and stuff like that. Because of that, what ends up happening is, in the recent years, let's say the last few decades, for example, the breeding starts going towards the dogs not having exactly their original characteristics, right? But them being a lot more calmer, because uh, because they need to be like that in the show ring, because they're not a king's dog anymore.
yeah.
Okay, so a lot of that does happen, and it's not just to the Shih Tzu; it happens to a lot of different dogs. Okay, so that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Okay, and that's precisely why when people come to me and be like, okay, I want to get this particular kind of breed, whatever that breed may be, the typical answer that I give is, okay, select a very good show line. Okay, and people are like, no, but we just want it as a pet for home. We don't want to go to dog shows or anything like that. I'm like, yes, exactly for that, people select a good show line. Spend that extra money and select a good show line, because the show dog typically, not always, I don't mean every single dog you'll get that. Okay. But more often than not, because in the last few generations, there will be dogs that are comparatively calmer, because what will happen is, in the show ring, the judge comes close and the dog gets riled up. They'll be like, no, 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 done.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So that dog will not, whatever, be, selected as the top breeding stock. And that dog is not bred as often as the others. Right. So, or, well, they might be bred, but that's not a top show line
Correct.
anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So that's sort of why I keep telling people that, what, like, it's going to be an out and out pet dog, select from top show lines. Okay, because the possibility of you ending up with a much more manageable dog is much higher that way, because they are they are pushed away from their original intention. Like you see a shoreline Malinois. It's not like what my Malinois is. See, look at what happened to the Doberman, for example. Okay. Now, do I like that this happens? No, I don't like it. Okay. I don't like it because the dogs move away from their original purpose. Okay. So I don't like it. But if someone's selecting an out and out pet dog, and you're sort of worried that that dog will be closer to what its original temperament was, like, for example, what you're talking about, the Shih Tzu. Same thing with Doberman. For example, growing up, me as a kid, like in first standard, second standard, we were scared of Doberman, right? Like, because, and we didn't know about Rottweilers back then. I hadn't heard about them. I don't know, for whatever reason. But people had Dobies and we would be extremely scared. I would, like one of my tuition teacher had a Doberman and we would be extremely scared of these dogs because, they were fairly closer to what their ancestors were like. Look at today's Doberman, right? Like, I would, like, when people are like, oh, I have a Doberman and I want to come and do PSA. I'm like, oh my God, please. Okay.
So I do not understand. What is the challenge here with a Doberman doing PSA?
Okay. So see what happens, right? Like, okay, let's talk. I don't want to get too technical here because pet parents, if this was a discussion amongst trainers, I would go there. But okay, so the thing is, you have to understand how evolution happens. Okay. If you don't use something for a while, it goes away.
Okay.
Okay. Like, we start having opposable thumbs. Okay. And you start using tools and you start using something akin to cutlery. Okay. Your canine starts becoming smaller.
Okay.
Right? Because you don't have to, be it fruit, be it flesh, that is an argument that will never die, but you don't have to, like, you don't have to tear it with your mouth anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So exactly the same way, if your dog doesn't have to do the things or is not doing the things that it once used to do, that ability starts going away over generations. Okay? If your dog's doing something else, in the last few generations, that ability usually starts increasing. Meaning, a dog that was basically running into the woods and biting paratroopers as they land, okay, now goes and stands in the shorings and trots around. It can no longer bite paratroopers and is very easy to handle by multiple people.
Okay.
Right? So that happens over generations. I don't want to get into the technicalities of this. Like I could tell you about epigenetics and how that works and stuff like that, but I don't want to get into that right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's typically what happens. So even within Shih Tzus, for example, what I would recommend, two things is, I would do a little bit of study in relation to bloodlines. I would find people who have dedicated their life to studying that breed. Okay. And trust me, there will be people. What ends up happening is, and this is the sad part, pet parents never meet these people. Okay. Pet parents meet the breeder at the corner of your street, living in some, typically some basti that basically breeds 7 different breeds. Yeah. And that's basically where your Shih Tzu comes from, right? Most of the times, not always, but most of the times, right? But there will be people who will have dedicated their life to just Shih Tzus, okay? And they will know very deep insights into not just the breed, but different bloodlines and how they are different. And if you don't want a dog that is a little, that can get riled up every now and then, irritable and stuff like that, there might be bloodlines who tend to that more. Okay, that this person might guide you towards. Okay, and if not, at least stay ready that your dog's going to be a little bit like this, and that you're going to have to manage a dog that is this way. I'm putting so much importance on selection, but the truth of the matter is that you're not going to get a tailor-made dog, no matter how much research you do, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to get yourself ready to manage the dog how that dog needs to be managed, right? And that's the truth of it. And with management, like, very honestly, we've handled dogs, and most people can handle dogs that have basically mauled people in the past. And I'm not saying that that goes away, okay? But that dog can be managed if that dog is not put into situations where it feels the need to do things like that. Okay, the dog will not do it. Okay, so managing an irritable Shih Tzu is not a big deal, but stay ready for a possibility, knowing that the breed of choice for me has this kind of a history and has, you know, and is potentially going to be this way.
Okay.
Right. The problem usually occurs when, you know, now I have a Shih Tzu, now I'm going to get a Labrador, and I want them to be friends, and I want my Shih Tzu to be, I don't know, my, you know, like my girlfriend's here now, and my Shih Tzu doesn't like my girlfriend. Maybe because she picks it up and she just wants to constantly coddle it, which maybe the dog doesn't like, whatever, right? Like, you know, if the dog's stressed by something, don't do it. Okay, like the dog doesn't care it's your girlfriend. The dog doesn't know she'll break up with you. Okay, as simple as that.
No, but this is a very good point. Like we've had dogs all our life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And uh my current dog, so I have a Rottweiler and a Jack Russell Terrier.
Mm-hmm.
They are completely different from what my previous dogs were. Okay. So previously I've had a Great Dane,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like, you know, she used to always be with me. She used to sleep on my bed. She used to like cuddling. My Rottweiler is completely opposite. Even if I
Mm-hmm.
touch him when he's sleeping, he'll just get up and go away.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know, I do understand, like, you know, every dog, as you said, is different. And
Mm-hmm.
for us uh, to build that proper relationship with them, we need to understand what they want, what are they trying to tell
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely.
And yes, so I earlier I started like, you know, I tried hugging him and stuff, and then when I started reading about it, hugging is not something that dogs are used to, or it is not something that is common for dogs, right? So
Well, I mean, it really depends. Like, I'll show you dogs that enjoy it,
yeah,
but there are definitely dogs that don't enjoy it and get really uncomfortable.
yeah,
So, I mean, okay, so one thing, you saw that research, right? A few years ago, it was all over Facebook, where hugging is not like your dog use it as whatever, and, you know, stuff like that.
okay,
Usually, dog related researches, especially behavior related researches, um, yes, while a lot of the knowledge that we have on training right now are based, that's where basically it comes from. But usually, one of the biggest problems that researchers typically have is sample size. Okay, so because dogs are genetically the most variation, like, you know, this is the species that has genetically the most variation of any other species on the planet. Okay, it's just very difficult to get a sample size for anything behavior related, especially because the like, for example, nutrition related, maybe it makes sense because nutrition wise the genetic variation is not as wide as wide. It might be still, because based on energy requirements, this, that, whatever, right? But in terms of behavior, the problem is you have so much variation that you have dogs that are something like retrievers, right? Or all gun dogs. Forget retrievers, all gun dogs. Then you have something like shepherds. Then you have something like scent hounds, you have something like sight hounds. These are supposed to be fairly different in how their social behavior expresses itself. Okay, let's say you have mastiffs, they're supposed to be extremely independent. Okay, versus your shepherds are not that independent. Okay, your retrievers and your gun dogs are not independent at all. Okay, so there is so much of genetic variation when it comes to social behavior, and this is also something that I feel like people need to take so much into consideration when like, okay, so for example, a pet parent comes to me and they're like, the problem is my dog, he when I have him off leash, he puts his nose to the ground and just starts walking somewhere I don't even know, and no matter how much I call out to him, he doesn't want to come back. And look at my neighbor's dog. My neighbor's dog will walk next to my neighbor, and he's not had much training, and nor has my dog. Or maybe, in fact, I've done a little bit of training, but it's still a constant fight. Okay, but yes, your dog is a beagle and your neighbor's dog is a retriever. Well, these are genetic tendencies. A retriever wants to be next to you. A retriever wants to please you. Okay, whereas a beagle, I'm not saying a beagle doesn't want to please you, but its tendency to just go off hunting on some random scent or something like that, okay, and then be able to zone out everything else.
Yeah.
Right. And
Can you also explain why that happens? Like we've had this discussion earlier, like why beagles give more importance to the smell, to the scent. So can you?
Okay, so people look at some of the things that humans have achieved over the years. Okay, I'm just going a little bit into the background. We tend to look at dogs and how they look and how they are like to look at from the point of view of typically now from the point of view of aesthetics. Okay, like I like how a German Shepherd looks. I like how a Labrador looks. I like how a Beagle looks or whatever, right? What if I told you a deeper look into this will tell you that dogs look a certain way. By and large, dogs look a certain way for certain reasons. Okay. For example, look at all the scent hound group. What are scent hounds? Beagles, bloodhounds, coonhounds, basset hounds, few others that I can't even think of. Okay. Along with them, think about your spaniel group. Okay, you have your Cocker Spaniel, your King Charles Spaniel, you have Springer Spaniels, all those dogs. All of them, if you see, their ears are long, right? The ears are long. Why do you think the ears are long? All dogs that are scent hounds, essentially, although spaniels are not exactly scent hounds, but scent hounds typically have, their ears are long. Now, why do they have their ears long? Because when they put their nose to the ground to track, the ears sort of fall next to the nose and it creates a funnel. Okay, it creates a funnel. It creates almost like blinders. So the dog is basically, like it creates that kind of a thing for the track, right? This is okay. Why does a beagle have a tail that is like standing up like an antenna? Okay, the place where beagles were bred and used for hunting, it's a place where this is a small bushland. Okay, so when the beagle would go hunting into the bushlands, its tail would stick out so you would know where the dog is. Okay, that's why the tail is like that. Okay, you see, for example, you see something like a retriever is supposed to have an otter tail, what they call it. So a retriever's tail ideally is supposed to move like this, never like this, or never like this. Okay, it's supposed to wag like this. Why is it supposed to wag like this? Because it's a water dog. Okay, it's designed for swimming. Its paws are also wider as compared to other dogs, right? You look at herding dogs, collies, German Shepherds, Malinois, Shelties, whatever, all these dogs, right? All of them have erect ears. Okay, all of them have erect ears and slightly longer snouts, making them look like wolves. So when they stare at sheep, they can influence sheep with a stare. Okay, because they look like predators. Okay, in comparison to that, if you look at LGDs, which is livestock guardian dogs are basically, your Caucasian Shepherd, your Turkish Kangal, all those dogs, right? If you see, they don't have long snouts. They have snouts that are pressed in. Typically, their coat is long and woolly,
like a sheep.
Okay, they are designed not to look like predators. They are designed to look like the flock. Okay, so make no mistake about this. This did not happen because of coincidence. Whoever selectively bred these dogs wanted it to be this way. Now, coming to why a beagle would just go off on a random scent is because in the tracking world or in the scent work world, there is something called as obedience to odor. Okay, what do we mean by that? That we want a dog that is bred for scent work to be more sensitive to following its nose as compared to following its handler. Why? Because imagine this. Imagine if I am a police officer that is handling a dog and looking for bombs, for example. And I'm nervous, obviously, because a bomb can go off, right? And we are working in the field. And let's say off to my left, I see that there is a box on the side of the street. Okay. But my dog is not headed there. My dog is least concerned about it. Okay. And I'm like, in my mind, because I'm nervous, I'm like, why aren't you searching there? Why aren't you searching there? Now the dog's not searching there because it's not there. Okay. What they say is the nose knows. Okay. If it's there, he would have searched. Okay. But he's not searching because it's not there. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is a very involuntary reaction in me because I'm nervous, because whatever. I'm going to try and guide the dog in that direction because my subconscious is like, we haven't searched that area. Okay. And what I need is a dog that is not sensitive to that guidance. Okay. And keeps very, almost like, bullheadedly keep following what its nose is telling it to follow. Okay. I need a dog like that because if it was a dog that is sensitive to me, the dog would start taking, feedback from me through the leash or whatever, as compared to just through its nose, which is not a good thing in that situation. Okay. So this is exactly why dogs that have a history of being bred for scent work specifically, and even more so in the hound category, have a tendency to, once they start sniffing around, start zoning out to a lot of basically cues from their handler. Okay. And now they become pet dogs and people don't realize why is this happening, right? How beagles are pretty trainable. If they're engaged with us, they're very nice. They're very like, it's fun to train and all that. But once their bum is towards you and they are off on their escapades, how people are like, the recall is a constant fight between the two of us. This is basically why it happens, because its genetics are guiding it to be less sensitive to that and to sort of be in this zone.
Okay. So do you think certain type of breeds, if we can train them in these sort of things, like a scent hound should be trained for smelling, sight hounds should be trained in their particular way, protection dogs should be trained for that, then do you think it makes it easier for the dogs and reduces um, uh, let's call it behavioral issues for now. Although
Yeah.
they're not, as in.
Yes, I mean, uh, yeah, I mean, like I've always felt this, right? Like I've never heard of, um, you know, like imagine like a sheep herd, uh, like or a shepherd in like somewhere in like the Appalachian Mountains, somewhere in Germany, saying that my herding dog has behavior issues, right? It never happens, oddly enough, right? It never happens because the dog's engaged in what it's supposed to do, right? That is not to say that if you bring home a dog and because it's getting that outlet, that behavior issues will not happen. But the problem is bigger. The problem is that uh, breeding and selection and everything is happening from the point of view of, um, let's say, I like how beagles look, or I like how what I want a chocolate lab only, like I want, or like, um, I got an Excel bully because they're fairly rare. Like I don't see a lot of people have these
Even
dogs.
Rottweilers, people get Rottweilers because they look good.
Yeah,
And
right. Now, in recent times, I see a lot of this, and like the amount of times in a month I get called that for like I want to give up my Malinois to you, and I'm like, I don't want your Malinois. Like, what am I going to do with it? But I'll help you place it somewhere where it can hopefully, because maybe it's getting dangerous or something like that, right? But that's basically what happens, right? Like, have we considered that this dog that we are talking about, and we are only talking about in terms of its aesthetics, right? Its anatomy and its color and all those things. But it comes with a certain kind of personality, comes with a certain kind of temperament that may or may not be suitable for you. You know, are we considering that? This is assuming that right now we are talking about a gene pool of well-bred dogs primarily. Then comes bad breeding, your backyard breeders and stuff like that, and then comes pet parents sort of being like, why would I spend 50,000 on a dog? I just want a pet dog, something
yeah.
like that. Yeah, but then you'll end up spending a lot more on training, so might as well, right? So yes, I think the outlook itself, it's not just a dog getting to do what it was bred for, but imagine if you select a dog that likes the things you like to do,
Yeah.
right? That likes the kind of lifestyle that you enjoy. Imagine you selecting a dog like that. Imagine, like, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, it's not just a trainer telling you, but as soon as you hear this, yes, I mean, that does make sense, right? Like, this is what I enjoy. Imagine selecting or being able to select a dog with someone's help, a dog that enjoys exactly that. I mean, it'd be so much easier, right? Like if you want a dog that sits, like, yes, whatever you do, you might have its exercise, whatever you're training, all those things, right? But yes, on every other Saturday I have a party at home and all my friends come over, and they like lounging around and having that dog next to them, and they might cuddle with the dog, pet with the dog, all those things. Maybe an Akita isn't the best dog for you, okay? And don't be like, yes, but the thing was, we read about Hachiko. No, read more into it, okay? Or be like, I don't know, like, uh, you know Labradors, like, so many people have them. uh, I didn't see so many Akitas around, so we were like, let's get an Akita because it's not as common. I mean, maybe there's a reason why Labradors are common
Yeah.
and Akitas are not. Think about that, right?
Yeah. Fair enough.
See, the
Okay.
thing is, I feel like everyone wants their dog to be unique in certain ways. Like everyone, like, I've seen pet parents, and I am a pet parent, so I want everyone to be like, man, Ronan's so cool, right? Everyone wants that. Everyone wants that, but there are other ways of doing that, right? uh, Selecting the wrong dog so that people are like, wow, his dog is so cool, but I can't go to his house because he might murder me, is not the best thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Should we take a few questions?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. Everyone, please put up your questions in the chat. We'll start with Tushar's question. So he's asking, how do you identify my dog's how do I identify my dog's core breed instincts, like guarding, alerting, searching, sniffing, etc. And how to work around these traits. I think we've covered that pretty much, and I think how to identify it is just read about it, right? It's or is there anything else?
I mean, what dog do you have? See,
He
for
he
me,
had a German Shepherd who passed away.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, yes, if your dog, German Shepherds typically would be like that, not always, but typically would be like that. But if your dog's getting a little territorial at the door, or when the bell rings, or when you're waiting for the lift and someone suddenly pops out of the lift and he goes a little psycho, you know, things like these are typical of dogs that have, like, those kind of tendencies. Okay, how do you work around it is by and large management. See, exactly, that happened like that. Yeah, it does happen like that. It's too, like, these are common things that I get called for every now and then. So yeah, these, basically, it's management. And I tell you why it's like, why I rely more on management, because I like fairness. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like the idea um of selecting a bird and then be angry when it flies. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like the idea of suppressing these things, because we made these things, we selected these things, and then we'll correct or punish the same things. Now, I'm not saying that, you know I'm not taking punishment entirely off the table and dog training in general. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. And there are correct and incorrect ways of doing that as well. Okay, but what I'm talking about is, this expression is just natural to that animal. It's urges that we put in there through selective breeding. What I would do is management. How do you do management is something, sadly, not as easy for me to explain in detail here. But basic crate training, just basic obedience on leash, have it, like, concentrate more on reliability rather than um, like flashiness. you know um, Having, um, like, teaching mutually exclusive behaviors. What does mutually exclusive behaviors mean? If your dog flares up and, like, reacts and sort of goes at people randomly in certain situations, if you teach that dog to hold a position next to you, which we typically call heel, okay, if you teach a dog to hold a position next to you, as long as the dog is holding this position, the dog cannot do that. Okay, and then you sort of get your dog comfortable slowly doing that. It's a slightly complex process, but a decent enough trainer will be able to do this for you and help you out with that. Right? It's slightly complex to explain here entirely.
Okay. So Tushar also asks, what is your view on the recent Goa government breed ban on 12 aggressive breeds? I thought it was only two, but okay. Uh, where are things going wrong?
Well, okay. It's I'm not like, like a typical dog lover. Um, I'm not like, I'm not going to give a very blanket statement that this is never a solution or something like that. I don't think it's the right solution. I don't like that breed specific legislature is becoming a thing now in India as well. I don't like it. like I'm with you there. But the problem is, do they have another solution, and which is implementable? I'm not talking about like, you can in theory say this should be done, but will it be done? Is the problem. I go to there is a hill nearby ARAI. I'm in Pune. I don't know, everyone's from different places, but I'm in Pune. So there is a hill nearby which I go to every once in a while with my son, who's 2 years old. Sometimes I take my dogs. For the longest time, I've not taken my dogs there because there are random pet parents who don't have a recall on their dog, who have dogs off leash. Okay, who will at times come at, like run at my dogs aggressively or playfully. Okay. Now, if they run at my dogs aggressively, that's a problem anyway. But if they come at my dogs playfully, how do you know my dog's not aggressive? My dog may be, because my dog's on leash. So I'm doing my part. Right? So these things are happening. These things are happening everywhere. Okay. The problem is, yes, like, what is the problem? Where are we going wrong? The problem is not dogs. The problem is we are stupid sometimes, and to be fair, I will not exclude myself from that, because there was a time when I was just a pet parent, when I've also been stupid like this, so I've done this, like today I look back at it and I was like, oh, you were a fool, like how could you do this? Like, okay. But there are ways around this. I feel like, there are ways to train like if you want off leash, if you want your dogs to be off leash, there are ways to train more like reliably. Okay. There are people who can help you train more reliably. The fact of the matter is that these kind of trainers are not as easily available to the general public. Okay. That's it happens, as much as we would like to deny it. But yeah, I mean, things are like, imagine, right? Like, yes, I'm a dog lover, but now imagine I'm a father as well. Imagine someone's dog runs up, like a Rottweiler runs up to me and or to us, and tries to bite my son or something like that. Now, because me being who I am, I can maybe do something about that situation. But not everyone is a dog person. They might not know what to do, and the dog might end up hurting their son or something like that. And then what's going to happen is they don't really care about that, but dog lovers, and the dog's an animal too, and everything. In that moment, that person is just going to be a father, I guess. And then, because you can't ban dogs overall. Okay, what breed was that dog?
Yeah.
So so then that sort of ends up happening.
But I think Dev, again, this is again a problem of poor choice, right? Like pet parents want certain breeds just because the breed looks good, or they've seen something on TV, or
well, can I say something here as well? I mean, just okay. I avoid this, and because of this, I'm almost not as, and this is particularly what I'm talking about when I said that, let's say trainers like me will not be as easily visible to you. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because whenever I've gone to like a pet event, okay, so the last time that I went to a pet event was, there was some event in the Ibis Hotel here on Nagar Road, and they called me to judge some weird obedience competition for pet dogs or something like that, right? And the thing is, the host was someone my father knew, and it was, I couldn't say no. The bottom line is, I couldn't say no. So I went there, and before that, as many times as I have gone there to any kind of this kind of a place, what do you usually see? You usually see, let's say, 3 or 4 people, like 3 or 4 person groups, that are standing together, socializing amongst themselves with leashes in their hand, to dogs that are at the end of the leash, tightened, meeting or like nose to nose with a dog from the other group behind them. Okay. One of them might be a Rottweiler, one of them might be a pug. Okay. These are dogs in a small, tight space. Okay. With dogs that they don't know. They've seen for the first time. Okay. At times, they're playing musical chairs with their dogs. Okay. With a Rottweiler at the end of the leash that every time the music stops is going, okay, and the Shih Tzu in the hands of the person right next to it. Okay. Where is the good choice in all of this? Because what's going to it's going to take one moment for that Shih Tzu to be eaten. And I see this, and like every single time I'm like, how are we not seeing that this is not good for them? This is stress. And how are we not seeing that, okay, yes, okay, my dog is never aggressive. Yes, at home. Okay, like you might be a fun-loving person, but let me put you into a tight room with 5 people you don't know, and all they are doing is smoking and drinking and being loud and stuff like that, and let's see how much time you remain calm. Okay, it's not normal for dogs to just socialize with dogs that they don't know, right? It's not normal. But the reality is, isn't this now a norm in the pet industry? It's not even something we once in a while do. It's a norm. There are brands that are advocating for this. There are big training companies that arrange socialization sessions that are this. Is that not it today?
Yeah.
Right? And then once in a while, you know, and then everything goes to shit when one guy shows up with a pit bull. Right? Because okay, are we not just going to take into consideration that genetics is a thing?
Correct.
Right? So, I mean, we are doing a lot of stupid shit, to be very honest. Okay? Right. As dog lovers, we are doing a lot of stupid things.
And I think at some point we've been misguided as well, because you ask pet parents what socialization means, and most of the time the answer is, oh, getting to meet new dogs, getting to meet new people, and so on and so on. But that is not only what socialization means, right? So socialization is
well, okay, so the reality of this thing, I like, this sort of starts riling me up a little bit, whenever this topic comes. But the problem is that the reality of things is that people want to socialize, not the dogs.
Yeah.
When I tell people that, your dog, the reality of it is your dog doesn't need dog friends. And people are like, what are you talking about? How? Like, they don't.
Yeah.
Your dog, like, so many pet parents will tell me, you know what, we got our second dog for our first dog. This is a thing. Do you know this? This is a thing. People get dogs for their dogs. Okay? Yeah. Dogs need other dogs when they don't have you. That's the reality of it. Okay? Let me give you a simple example. There was a experiment that was done somewhere some time ago. I don't remember when and where. But if you guys want, connect with me in a few days, and I'll look it up again, and I'll bring it back to you where it was. But the experiment was this: that what they did was they set up like a drawer kind of an apparatus, which had to be pulled simultaneously on 2 sides in order for it to open. And there was food inside it, meat or whatever. Okay, and put wolves into that enclosure. Okay, it's fairly known that wolves are extremely good at coordination. Okay, they're extremely good at coordination. Wolves figured it out. They started pulling at it simultaneously, opened it, ate the meat. Awesome, done. They tested a lot of dogs, like from multiple dog households, where they had 2 dogs together or whatever. and they put those two dogs in that enclosure and they couldn't get it open. Okay, they couldn't coordinate. One would pull, one would not, one whatever. They could not coordinate. Okay, but the fun thing is this: when they put that dog inside with their humans, then they could coordinate. Okay, what evolution has done to dogs is that they have placed humans in place of a same species pack member should have been. Okay, so I'm telling you, trust me when I'm telling you this, your dog does not need another dog. Your dog needs you to understand it. Your dog gets more attracted to other dogs at times because you don't understand it. It doesn't get out of you what it gets out of that other dog. If you understand it and if you are able to provide what its requirements are, your dog will not take interest as much in other dogs as much as it takes in you. Okay, like this is exactly how you can have two bomb sniffing dogs working next to each other and not take interest in each other. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is very common. I don't know where it's come from, but somehow people think that dogs need dogs. Dogs don't need dogs. And fine, I'm not saying don't have two dogs or don't have, that's not what I'm saying. The worst thing you can do is put your dog in face to face with a dog that it absolutely doesn't know in a tight space.
Correct.
Because you have to understand, your dog is on leash. It doesn't have anywhere to like back up. Okay. Plus these kind of fests and stuff like that. It's like, imagine so many people, so many dogs, so many smells. What you don't even know is your dog has access to a world you don't even know exists. Smell. Okay. And that smell is enough to create stress in a dog. So a dog that at home has never shown reactivity goes to a place like this and shows reactivity, don't be surprised. It's stress. Right?
All right. Divya is asking, within a breed, does coat color affect temperament?
In certain dogs, yes.
Oh, yeah? Okay, I had
certain dogs,
absolutely no idea.
in
Okay.
certain, so the thing is a lot of things. So there are some genes. Now, I'm not someone who studies genetics beyond social behavior and temperament and stuff like that. But there are some genes that are I don't know what it's called. I keep forgetting what it's called. But basically that affect two things. Like for example, the flash gene, the white gene in the Dalmatians, for example, okay, are responsible for deafness.
Okay.
Okay. So if you didn't know, there is no Dalmatian in the world that is not at least carrying a gene of deafness. Okay. Like it may express itself in some dogs and it may not express itself in some, but it's there in the entire gene pool.
Okay.
Right? What some people are now saying is that dogs should not be bred. We shouldn't breed them anymore. Because we know that color, for example, is responsible for also, I mean, not that color, but the gene that is responsible for that color is the same gene that is responsible for deafness. It's the same in white boxers. The flash gene that creates the white.
Yeah.
It
albinos.
So it's responsible in, so apparently they call it flash or something anyway. So that's not important, but right. So that's what's responsible for certain things. So yes, there are what I was reading about recently. Again, I don't have, because I'm not someone who's like extremely into that breed anymore. So I'm not. I don't read in too much depth, but there are certain bloodlines in Rottweilers who have like a very, very sort of tight, dry. I don't want to call it coat type exactly, but I don't know if you know what dryness means in Rotties.
Yeah.
You know what dryness means, right?
Yes.
So there are certain bloodlines that are extremely dry, that tend to have a little bit of like a sharp edge to them, meaning they can be a little frisky.
Okay.
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 So, and this I was reading in relation to a particular litter down south, which a couple of my students had puppies from, and they were like that. And so we were just sort of doing some research on that, and that's when we came across that basically. So
Okay.
yes, certain coat types or anything really, like it'll just be very breed specific. So there are too many breeds and there are too many characteristics for me to know all of them. But I've given you one example that I can think of that I recently was reading about, right? But what I would recommend is the breed that you're thinking about. Read up a lot on that and you will find out. But yes, there will be things like that.
Okay. All right. So Vedika is asking, how do we know what genes the Indies have when picking up from the street or shelters? Does DNA test help? Since we know uh, we need to start training a beagle for recall from day one, what will help understanding Indies genes? Okay, I think this
Nice.
is where it gets a little controversial.
Not really. I mean, if you're willing to look at the truth as truth, it shouldn't be controversial. Okay. See, what to me, what is more important than where its genes are coming from in terms of what are the different mixes that they might carry. More than that, I would like to look at, let's say, if a dog, what is the probability of, let's say there is a puppy that I found on the street and I'm going to adopt. Okay. Well, not on the street, maybe, I don't know, that's not the right thing to do if the mother's around, but whatever, from the shelter or wherever. But it's essentially a dog, an indie that maybe through certain people that know where it's been rescued from or whatever, I know that its last few generations, or maybe just by the way it looks or whatever, it is a logical thing to assume that its last few generations have lived out on the street. Okay. What you have to understand is genetics, as they, and what we talked about previously, what you use or what you need is what will get into, and this is where epigenetics basically happens, right? So whatever the dog is doing, slowly its genetic makeup starts, or whatever the dog is exposed to, not doing, whatever the dog is exposed to, slowly, and I'm not talking about one dog. When I mean, like, like through generations, whatever exposure the past 2, 3, whatever generations have had, that will start affecting the way its genetic makeup is. Okay. So when we talk about indies, they are adapted to the streets. Okay. They have to, because if they have to survive on the street, they have to adapt to the streets, right? Like, how we've heard about how indies are smarter than all the purebred dogs. They absolutely are, because they have to be, right? Like, for example, like we have indies on our streets that, there are cars passing by, all of that. They can navigate through all of that really well. If my dog, my Malinois, was to, for whatever reason, he had to live on the street, he wouldn't survive an hour. Okay. So they have to be smarter than purebred dogs, right? So how does that come about being? That happens through whatever exposure they are getting. And, like throughout the generations, their genetics basically modify to adapt to their environment and whatever they are being exposed to. That's basically how this works, right? So when you get an indie, there are certain things that it would be wise for you to foresee or anticipate certain things that an indie would probably show you. Okay. Meaning what? There is a good chance that your indie might become territorial of your house. There is a good chance. Why? because out on the street they have to be territorial, right? Because if they are not territorial, they may not be able to survive. They have to be very protective of their territory. Okay, so because of that, they might have a genetic tendency to be territorial. So it would be good if you adopt an indie that you stay ready for this, and the life that you create for your indie, you create accordingly. Meaning what? Teach crate training. Teach crate training in, preferably have the crate in a room inside, so that every single time a guest comes in, the dog's not firing up on them. So like have a lot of management, uh, sort of, ways to do management in place, right? So you have all those things. Okay, there is a possibility, there is a good possibility that your indie might show resource guarding in relation to food, at least, if nothing more. Why would that happen? Because on the street it is unnecessary. Now I'll tell you what's going to happen. Like, this would be very interesting for me if in the next 10 years, with all the feeders going around and feeding dogs, indies having more than enough food now, okay, especially in certain areas more than others, will the resource guarding and all that reduce in maybe 10 years? It would be fun thing to, just like to satisfy your scientific curiosity, right? But as of right now, your dog that is adapted to basically out in the street, needing to fight for their food, needing to guard their resources, and stuff like that. There is a good chance that your indie might at some point start developing these tendencies. Again, not all of them might, but a lot of them might. Okay, so it would be good if you start already having a certain structure in place to avoid problems in this relation. How would that happen? Yes, like already have a fixed feeding spot for it. Maybe if you have like a kennel or a crate kind of a setup, maybe the dog eats there and then comes out, something like that. There are other management ways that also, like there's too much to sort of talk about here, but what I'm saying is have all these things in place. Okay, that will really help you with in relation to this. The other typical problem is, and that doesn't get considered as much, that, and I would like people to consider it, is that usually a territorial animal, any animal that is typically territorial, when the size of the territory reduces, that usually stresses out an animal. Look at any animal that is territorial, because territory is very intrinsically linked to resources. Okay, so any animal that is very that is territorial, when its territory reduces in size, starts getting more stressed and starts getting like its show of aggression might increase. Okay, because aggression primarily happens through some form of stress. Okay, now what happens is, typically you may not see the indie out on your street guarding the food from you, but when that same indie comes into your home, it might do it, because the size of the territory reduces. Okay, for me, I am very big on like, okay, so like at my farmhouse, for example, I have indies, just indies. Okay, because that is awesome for them. Their territory size hasn't reduced, right? Like they don't typically fall into the same sort of stress traps that otherwise they might. So what I'm saying is, if you're living in the city, if you're living in a bungalow or in an apartment and you have indies as your indoor dogs, it would be nice if we can anticipate these situations, and we can create, like, if we are anticipating them, we can create management, sort of ways of management that would put them in less and less stress. Okay, and this is something that we really do need to understand, that aggression is coming, like when a dog is being aggressive, it's coming from a place of stress, so it's not good for them either. Okay, so like if it's happening too much, it can have other. Okay, so if someone has an indie, not just indie, any dog really, But if it's having like constant, like if you're really struggling with this, where it has like resource guarding issues, it has a lot of territorial issues, maybe it sits in the window and is just flaring up people that passing by, something like that, a lot of times you will see these dogs have constant outbreaks of mange. Okay, what is exactly happening? When so much cortisol reduces the immune system, it starts, the immune system starts going weaker, right? Like for example, if you're constantly stressed, you typically have the flu often, right? Similarly, because dogs have mites on them, it is just the immune system is holding it at bay, right? Once the immune system sort of gets a little compromised, you will see mange happen very quickly, right? So this is typically what is happening, right? So just have like management solutions in place so that you can help the India out, basically.
Okay. All right. So again, Vedika is asking, is parallel walking and butt sniffing the right way to introduce two dogs?
I mean, it's better than like pushing each other. Like, see, to be very honest, for me, right, like I want dogs to coexist. I don't, the more times than often, what I've seen is problems start occurring when we ask them to be friends, because they may or may not be friends. That's really up to them. There's really, like, honestly, there's nothing you can do to make dogs friends who don't want to be. Okay, but there's a lot you can do to make them coexist. There's a lot you can do to make them be like, I don't care, just don't fight. And that's all you should be concerned about, really. And then if they are the kind of dogs that are going to gel well with each other, that'll happen. If they are not, they'll learn to live together. And that's all really that you can ask. See, a lot of things don't we take for granted a lot of times. Like, imagine if I tried to make you friends with someone.
Yeah.
That's, like a lot of times someone comes into our family, right? Like someone gets married, and because of that, someone is a part of our family now, extended family or otherwise. And we may not really enjoy that person, right? We don't,
Yeah.
It happens so often. We may not really enjoy that person, and it's okay, right? Like all that is required is that, you don't start like a fight
Fighting with each other.
in
Yeah.
the household. Yeah, that's all that is required, right? So
Yeah. Okay. So Divya is asking again, is there a behavior in a dog that is considered undesirable, and one doesn't know the background of the dog before he came to you, adopted as an adult in brackets? Uh, is there a way to identify if it is genetic or learned behavior, and is there a way to desensitize to the triggers or management, or is management the way forward?
okay, so okay, now to be fair, there is no real way to put your finger on this is genetic and this is, but the thing is, right, usually when something's there, it's usually both. Okay, like if you have a really well-bred Labrador, for example, like a really well-bred Labrador, it's really difficult to make it aggressive, right? So if a dog has, without like, can you potentially make that dog aggressive? Yes. Okay, but you're going to have to do something extremely unethical, extremely inhuman to try and do it. You know what I mean? So, which, assuming that is not the case in this, in an adopted dog's life, but the potential for there to be some genetic tendency there is slightly on the higher side. What you can do, on the other hand, is, again, like I said, you spot a lot of commonalities. right? Like someone was asking this question about their German Shepherd, and I said the exact two things that his dog is doing, right? Like firing up at people at the lift and barking at the door. And he was like, yes, this is what my dog is doing, or what my dog was doing, right? I know this, and I gave these two examples because I see so many German Shepherds on the regular, and I see all of them have the same problem, and all of them have different owners, all of them have different environments, right? So it definitely isn't a raising issue, right? Like I can't, like, yes, okay, I might tell you, oh, you did not socialize your dog, but there are 100 different people, and if I'm going to believe blindly that 100 people did not socialize their dog, that's a little bit stupid on my part. So, right, like the common factor I have to derive, yes, it must be the dog, right? So exactly the same thing, right? Like if I, like what I was talking about, for example, indies also, right? I see these similar problems in so many of these dogs, right? If I talk about, for example, what I talked about beagles, it's basically you figure it out by seeing the commonalities and then eliminating the other things. Like for example, okay, someone like okay, this dog might be adopted, but a similar, like if you've seen like 50 other similar dogs, like if it's a purebred dog, for example, if you've seen 50 other dogs of that kind that all have similar problems of different intensities maybe, but similar tendencies, that's probably genetic. If it's an indie, for example, again, so many people that have indies, if they are seeing similar tendencies, yes, it's probably genetic. So that's how you have to figure out really.
So Kiran is asking how to identify bloodlines. Is that something that
Okay.
comes under your purview?
I mean, how to identify bloodlines see, what will typically happen is in any particular breed, there will be cornerstones. What does a cornerstone mean? There will be a dog or a bitch that influences tremendously where the breed is going from there on. Okay, they will appear in a lot of the top dogs in your particular breed. Okay, that is typically what will happen. These dogs will then, like the bloodlines from there onwards will be known by the name of this dog, for example. Okay, like in the Malinois breed, for example, you will have something like a Kuno bloodline, something like a Yaguz bloodline, something like a Claim bloodline, something like that. So this is basically, how do you understand all of this is, if you have a breed that that you want to study, okay, and when I say I'm not trying to understand, I'm not saying a breed that you like, okay, because it can be very superficial. When I say a breed that you want to study, I mean, like, see, I'll tell you what breed is supposed to be and what it is supposed to be like. Because there are a lot of wrong sort of, because there is always that fight that, why would you have this, like, people like all this foreign breed and this, that. A breed is basically just a gene pool of dogs of similar tendencies, so that you can identify the kind of dog that gels well with you. Okay, that's all it is supposed to be. Now, when I say that the breed that you want to study, for example, in the last 10 years, I've enjoyed myself so much with Malinois. Okay, with Belgian Malinois, I've enjoyed a lot. Now, when my son grows up, if he is to get a Belgian Malinois and he is to find the same enjoyment in that dog as I did, I am the one responsible that I pass on that breed just as was passed on to me. Okay, so that is basically when you become a custodian of the breed. So if there's something like that for you, hang out with knowledgeable people from the breed of your choice, right? Talk to them, learn from them, uh, offer to help out. It's, that's basically how you learn about bloodline.
Okay. All right. Okay. Naina is asking how to let a Shih Tzu know that something he's done is not okay. I don't want to use punishment or shouting, uh, ma but make the message clear.
You cannot. It's as
So what?
simple as that. No, so I'll tell you, there are, when you want a dog to do something, okay, or not do something, okay, there are two things in training. There is a read up on operant conditioning. If it's very, like, just Google operant conditioning and you will find it. Okay, operant conditioning has reinforcement and it has punishments. Okay, by the thumbs up and the thumbs down, reinforcement, okay, increases the likelihood of a particular behavior. Okay, punishment decreases the likelihood of a particular behavior. Okay, so for example, if a dog sits and you give it a treat, you reinforce the behavior, which means the probability of the behavior happening again has increased. Okay, now similarly, now everyone's like, yes, this is positive reinforcement, we know, but now imagine this: if you're holding the dog's leash, okay, and let's say you make the leash tight slightly, not too much, not like you are choking the dog or anything, just slightly tight, and the dog sits, okay, and as soon as the dog sits, you loosen the leash. Okay, now yes, there was some discomfort that the dog experienced. That discomfort went away when the dog did a particular behavior. Now this has not reduced any behavior. This has also increased the possibility of a sit. This is also a reinforcement only. Okay, but when you want a behavior to go away, okay, like for example, if a dog is chasing a car and you don't want it to chase a car, right? The only way to explain to the dog that you shouldn't be chasing a car and chasing a car is wrong behavior is, if you want to reduce the likelihood of a behavior happening, punishment. That's the only way. Now, punishment can also be done in a number of ways. Does not mean you have to beat up a dog or anything like that. That's very draconian, really. That's not what punishment entails. And I can go into like the details of, like, withholding a reward is also punishment. But in this case, there's really not much you can do. Like, for example, if a dog is chasing a car, right? Like, if a street dog was chasing a car, the car would probably hit the dog and the dog would break a leg, and that's how it would get punished. And then it would learn not to do it. Okay. We can do it in a lot more, in a way which is not long lasting, which in a lot of control ways, where yes, there will be some discomfort, but there will be no damage. Okay. The reality of things is that if you don't want to use punishment at all, and if you don't want your dog to do that certain thing that you're talking about, don't put your dog in that situation. Management, essentially. There is no, what can I tell you? There is no way to give a treat and explain, don't do this. Yes, you can explain what to do with a treat. You can't explain what not to do with a treat. Okay, and sadly, this logic where a lot of trainers will tell you this, that no, like, if you don't want your dog to jump, okay, give it a treat when it is not jumping. Okay, Uh, Sadly, that is not how things work. Yes, what might happen is if your dog is jumping for the treat and it realizes it gets it when it is sitting, yes, you explained it how to get the treat, and so the dog might not jump. But if the dog is not jumping for the treat, but the dog is jumping because there is something intrinsically fun in the jumping, then that treat is not like, imagine, think about it like this. When you teach a dog to sit, you teach a dog to do a down, right? When you teach a dog to sit, does it stop doing a down? Or when you teach your dog to down, does it stop doing a sit? No, right? So rewarding the other thing will not eliminate this. Okay, that's, yes, I mean, it would be nice if it did, but it doesn't. So,
Okay.
There's no way to really, get rid of a behavior by rewarding it or rewarding anything else or something like that.
All right. I think that is it. Uh, Vedika has just made one more statement saying that uh, from what I understand, management will help much more once you observe all the personality traits of a particular dog.
I mean, yes. That's why, like, what would help you is see, I'll tell you what happens, right? Like with pet parents, you don't get to see as many dogs in as much depth as, let's say, trainers do, right? Like a lot of times I get in touch with people who are like, I've always had dogs. For the last 30 years, I've had dogs. But what happens is 30 years is 2 dogs. Like if you had 1 dog at a time and it lived for 15 years, it's 2 dogs.
Yeah.
Right? Or even if it's like 4 dogs, that's not a lot of dogs, right? Plus, because we have so much genetic variation, and I don't know what kind of dog you had. So what would help is if you take the help of someone who's already seen so many dogs, who works with so many dogs on the regular and all that, they might be able to foresee a lot of these things, right? So management is easier when the dog, like for example, there can be a dog that might have resource guarding, okay, but from puppyhood was never put in a position where it was necessary to guard a resource. Like I can show you dogs like that just by, we know where it has come from. I know if it was put in a position like that, the dog's going to start doing that. But it's never done that because we never put it in a position. And because it was never put in a position that it will guard a resource, it will never realize that it works. Okay. And the aggression will never keep being reinforced. You know what I'm saying? Because what happens is, the one time, let's say you pass by and the dog growls and you don't even realize it, but the dog in his mind, like, you are passing by, but the dog is like, see, I growled and I made the person go away. You're not realizing that this aggression is being reinforced, right? The next time you pass by, the dog sort of snarls and comes at you a little bit, right? So this is how it keeps getting in, like, this is how it increases, right? And once it's there, now you're going to have to manage more. But imagine if you never let a situation arise where something like this happens, right? Like for me, if I have an indie at home, I'm not going to have, my indie will never get like chew sticks or anything that is chewable. Like for example, whatever, like Sagar, what do we use for, like, like a, I don't know, like a goat foot or whatever we use for like chewing.
Trotters. Yeah.
Right? Something like that. My indie will never get something like that to eat in the house. If that has to be done, it is inside the crate or kennel. Always. Always. It can never be in a place. Also, if it's, ideally, I will see to it that it's quick consumable, meaning I don't want something to be there which is like really long lasting, because I don't want to go near the kennel or near the crate when it has that inside. Like, I'm going to take care of all these things. I'm going to ensure that I don't have food lying around. I've seen so many places where, there's just food laying around 24/7, whatever, right? And the dog comes and eats and whatever, whenever, right? So whenever the dog's near the food and you pass by, the dog gets riled up and then maybe the aggression gets reinforced, or if not, you have to stand against your dog or whatever. So, like these are the things that I would do to manage, because I know that since I'm getting an indie home, for example, and this is not limited to an indie, I'm just giving that example. Okay? This might be, whatever. Any dog can have resource guarding. But if I know that this particular dog might have a propensity to do that, from the beginning, I'm going to, set up things in that way. So if you don't know, like if you've not seen the whole personality and you may not know what the tendencies this dog may or may not have, it would help to get someone on board that can help you foresee a lot of these things, right?
Okay. So we'll take the last question. This is by Digvijay. He says, I have a 8-month female beagle and I stay in a 1 BHK apartment. How can I channelize puppy to stay calm when off leash? I don't want to keep her I don't want to keep her tied up all day and want to be free, making her aware of limits.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, when untied, puppy gets excited a lot and creates a mess.
Okay, in the house, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a process to this. Okay. Slightly complicated. Since the last question, I'm going to attempt to sort of give you an overview to this. What I would do is, because I have dogs that are supposed to be like, counted as like very fairly energetic and, like that, those kind of dogs, fairly active and stuff like that. Excuse me. Puppy comes home. First thing I teach the puppy is crate training. What is crate training essentially is, you have a crate, cage, kennel, whatever you want to call it. I teach the puppy that crate is its room, is its bedroom. How do you teach it? It's a process on its own, right? I'm not going into the details of that here, because I'll have to go into the details of every detail, and then, but that's a process in its own. But what you can do essentially is, you can condition the dog to feel like this is my bedroom, essentially. Okay. The puppy stays in the crate. Puppy comes out. Whenever the puppy comes out, it is not left to its own devices. The puppy comes out, it always does something with you. Meaning, it comes out, first thing, what does the puppy do? It goes for toilet, because it's been in the crate for a little bit of time. So it's probably wants to relieve itself. First thing, you take it where you want it to pee, poop, whatever, wherever that may be. Okay. Once it's relieved itself, you play, you teach it like basic training, whatever it is that you want to do. Like, teach it with a treat, you teach it to sit, teach it to down, give paw, whatever it is that you want to engage its mind with. Okay. Now, what's going to happen? The puppy is tired because it's a puppy. So a lot of this, like brain activity, even slight bit of physical activity, will tire out a puppy. Come back home, you put the puppy in the crate. Okay. Now the puppy sort of has started getting the understanding that, okay, crate is a place to rest. When we go out, that is a place to run around, fun, enjoy all those things. Okay. Your problem really is, your puppy does not have any idea of that yet. Your puppy doesn't have an idea what is a mess, right? Your puppy thinks, okay, I am out, I can play. So it plays. In the process, it is destroying things which it doesn't understand that this is destroying. Okay. So what you need to do is, you need to keep the puppy away from the possibility of being able to do that. Now, again, slowly, few days later, now you're taking the puppy out. The puppy gets whatever, like, you go outside, you engage with the puppy, you teach it things, run around, play, enjoy, all of those things. You come back home. Now the puppy is tired. It's going to spend some time outside with you. maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the house, not playing this time. The playing has already happened. Now, let's say you're sitting down and watching TV and the puppy is laying on the couch next to you because it's tired already. Okay? It can spend 10 minutes with you on the couch. After 10 minutes, it goes back into the crate. Okay? Slowly, what you do is every time the puppy spends time with you outside in the house, it is always after it come back from playing, training, whatever it is. Okay? So it is always tired. So the chances of it getting into a lot of stupid things and you having to stop it reduces. Okay? Now you put it back into the crate. Slowly, what you're going to do is you're going to increase the time that it spends outside, right, after playing, and you're going to decrease the time in the crate. And then slowly you can eventually eliminate the crate. Like you can use it just if you're traveling or whatever it is, right? So what happens is it happens gradually, and it always happens where the puppy was already tired. So the possibility of the puppy getting into trouble because it is like too energetic is not there, right? So this is basically the process. Now, this might also happen naturally. Like for example, it's like potty training. Usually there is no 10-year-old dog that is not potty trained or 8-year-old dog that is not potty trained. Eventually they figure it out, but it is a lot of headache till they figure it out, right? Similarly, your dog will eventually anyway learn how to stay in the house without basically destroying the house. Most times, more often than not. But till it figures out not to destroy the house, it's going to be a lot of damage and expenses for you. So by doing this, you basically, you can do this without really being, hard on yourself and all that. And then what you also do is with this, you can establish what I was talking in the very beginning of our conversation, that you can have like a context for playing and training and having fun and like energetic fun basically. And you can have a separate context for, just like passive, we are sitting next to each other, we are enjoying each other's company, but we are not really doing anything physical or energetic, like we can create those contexts with this, right? So yeah, this is basically how I would do it.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap this up, Dev.
Awesome.
Any of you guys have any questions, you can reach out Dev at Titanium Canines on Instagram. And if you need to get in touch with him separately for any training sessions, you can let us know. We'll put you in touch with him. Okay. Do you want to add anything, Dev?
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I hope everyone had their questions answered to whatever extent I tried to the best of my ability, but I mean, it's a little bit of a limitation just doing
So
here.
one thing I've realized, Dave, is questions are something that will keep on happening. Okay.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep on improving a little bit for pet parents, I think it is a win for us. We can't expect everyone to learn everything at a time. So a little more information than what they entered the webinar with is what we are aiming for.
Right.
And I think we've achieved a lot more than that. So thank you for taking out time to help us with this webinar. And yes, hopefully I'll see you again in Pune the next time I'm
Awesome.
there.